What's up, guys? Coach Jim coming at you from FPC TAC OPS, starting off our video series. So the first thing we're going to talk about in our video series is TSAC programming fundamentals. So first and foremost, what does TSAC mean? Okay, TSAC is just a very simple acronym, tactical strength and conditioning. Very simple, very basic. Okay, so the first thing we want to look at when we start thinking about putting together a TSAC program or any sort of strength and conditioning program is the specific job, role, or MOS of the athletes that we're training or the individuals that we're training, whether it's first responders, so firefighters, policemen, EMTs, or whether it's military, so Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, whether you're working with General Army or Special Forces, Green Berets, Navy SEALs, whatever it is, whatever population you're working with, you need to understand the specific demands and needs of that population. So how do we do that? How do we accomplish understanding the needs? Well, we perform a needs analysis. Okay? And a needs analysis doesn't have to be anything complicated. It doesn't have to be super in-depth. It can be. It can be as in-depth or as complex as you want to make it, or it can be very basic and very simple. Because really, at the end of the day, a needs analysis is just an examination of the specific demands of each position. Very simple. And that can get broken down into components such as ESD, which stands for Energy System Development. So what kind of energy systems are this population working with, or is this population working with? What are their mobility demands? Do they have plane-specific movement demands, and what are their strength, speed, and power demands? We'll talk more about this stuff as we progress through the video. But these are some of the components of a needs analysis. So just like any sort of strength conditioning program, you want to move from general to specific. Now, if you're familiar with West Side Barbell, conjugate method, or anything like that, which is how I program, which is how I approach programming methodology, we use what's called GPP. Okay, so we want to first, before we do anything specific, we need to make sure we have a very solid foundation and develop a good base layer of GPP. Now, GPP can be a bunch of different things. It can be cardiovascular exercise, it can be energy system development, it can be general workload, it can be technique driven. So like, if somebody doesn't know how to squat yet, we build GPP through developing squat techniques, squat patterning, any movement patterning like that. And there's a number of ways that we can go about creating GPP, and we'll discuss in a later video how to create GPP. We'll do a whole video on developing a base layer of GPP, which stands for General Physical Preparedness, if you're not familiar with the term. So we won't get into it too much today. Today's going to be very, very quick and very to the point. Once we develop a base layer of GPP, which can take a relatively indeterminate amount of time. It can take as long as it needs to take, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks. It can take less, it can take longer, depending on specific demands of your population and their training age and all that kind of stuff. So once we develop a base layer of GPP, we want to start adding layers of specificity. So that's where understanding the needs analysis, the particular demands of the job, role, or MOS comes into play. So we start with a foundation, and then we build layers towards the peak. Okay. So we think about this from a perspective of building on a pyramid. Okay. So we're here with our foundation. This is a super, super accurate pyramid. So if our foundation's here, okay, here's our foundation. This is GPP. And then as we approach the peak, we can add as many layers of specificity as necessary. So some populations, maybe like in more advanced tactical populations, let's say like maybe the Navy SEALs or Delta Force or Green Berets or any sort of special operators like that, might require multiple layers of specificity in order to be at their peak performance. Now, this is not taking anything away from like first responders or the police or firemen or anything like that, but based on the demands of a particular job or role or MOS, there may be fewer, okay, we may have fewer layers. Start over. We may have fewer layers of specificity, so we still want our layer of GPP. So our GPP foundation is still here. That's going to be a constant. We're never going to not have GPP, because think about this, and I'm getting sidetracked, and I apologize, right? But think about this from the perspective of a vehicle, of a car, right? If GPP is equal to your gas tank, okay, so GPP is your go. And this is how much fuel you have in reserve in your tank. This is your capacity to perform work. Okay, and then our SPP, which is either specific or special physical preparedness, depending on how you want to term it. This is your engine. Okay, so again, GPP is the gas tank. This is your fuel. The more fuel you have, the bigger your gas tank, the more effective and efficient your engine is going to be, and the longer your engine can run. But to come back to what I was saying before, so again, depending on the job, the role, or the MOS, okay, we always have this layer of GPP. However, we may require fewer layers of specificity. So again, a tactical operator, such as like a special forces operator, may require more layers of specificity because of the demands of their particular role, their job, and their duty, and the tasks that they are being required to perform. Whereas somebody like a police officer, who is still a tactical individual and still has to perform physical, arduous tasks, may require less layers of specificity based on their demands. And this all comes down to, as the coach, as the TSAC facilitator, the tactical strength conditioning facilitator, this all comes down to doing your needs analysis and understanding the population that you're working with. If I'm working with a police officer, I'm going to train that individual differently than I'm going to train a firefighter or an EMT, based on not their skill set, not their skill level necessarily, but the demands of the population. So that's a basic GPP versus specificity. And so here are some different ways, different layers of specificity we can add in. Right? So we want to look at ESD, which stands for Energy System Development. Okay, so this is developing your cardiovascular system, your aerobic system, your anaerobic system, all that kind of stuff. We want to focus on mobility. Okay, do they have specific mobility demands that need to be met? Are they squatting or jumping or running or twisting or doing all kinds of different movements? And that leads into this plane-specific movement. Are they operating in transverse plane, frontal plane, sagittal plane? Are they operating in all planes of movement? And then how do we train those particular demands, those plane-specific movements, so that we don't incur injury and so that we are as strong as possible through those ranges of motion? And finally, for today, we'll wrap it up after this, what are their strength, speed, and power demands? Now, as a West Side conjugate disciple, okay, where I put a lot of my values on strength, okay, strength and power, okay, because in my opinion, maximal strength is the foundational quality other than GPP. Okay, so once we get above GPP, so again, if we have our pyramid, and an artist I am not, so if we have GPP, from here we have max strength. So if GPP is the foundation, max strength should be the next layer of the foundation, the next layer of specificity. Now, not every tactical population, not every tactical operator is going to need high levels of strength. Like, you don't have to be maximally strong like a power lifter, right? A power lifter's specific demands are to lift as much weight as possible. Okay, when we start looking at a tactical strength and conditioning program, or a program for a tactical operator, whether military or civilian, strength is going to play an important role, but not so much from like a how strong can you be perspective, but if I'm stronger, I'm going to be more effective, more efficient, and less likely to incur injury, because as we all know, a stronger muscle is typically a more durable and resilient muscle and is going to have a lower likelihood of suffering injury. So again, as a conjugate guy, this is where I put a lot of my value. Okay, this is how I program a lot, is developing this maximal strength. Now, that's not to say that we don't put value on speed or power or endurance or mobility or all that kind of stuff. Like, this has to be a holistic approach. Okay, there can't be any one point along this continuum that is more well developed than the other, because what happens, just like Louis Simmons always says, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, right? And weak things break. That's one of my favorite sayings. So if we have one of these factors, so strength, speed, power, I don't have it listed here, but like endurance, let's call it, okay, or mobility, or energy system development, if one of those factors is weak, that's where you're going to fail. And when it comes to developing tactical strength and conditioning programs, we want to make sure that we approach this from as a holistic perspective as possible and try to encompass as much of the demands that these operators, again, whether military or civilian, are going to be incurring or encountering on a daily basis. So, this has been a very quick rundown, and I just wanted to use this as an introduction. Okay, this has been a very quick rundown on the way that I sort of start thinking about tactical strength conditioning programs. Now, as we progress through these video series, okay, we'll start talking about developing strength, speed, power, energy system development, mobility. We'll talk about GPP, we'll talk about adding layers of specificity, but really what I wanted to do today was sort of like get this whole series rolling and provide a very, very superficial perspective on how to put together a tactical strength conditioning program. So, if you have any questions, you can find me on Instagram at FPC TAC OPS, okay, on Instagram. You can also find me at Jimberjacked on Instagram. So feel free to hit me up with any questions, concerns, comments, or suggestions you might have for further video or further content. And as always, fellas and ladies, as always, don't waste the pain.